Everybody. Why don't you all head over or sit down and we can get started. I'd like you to welcome everybody here to our awesome developer experience meetup. We got a packed house today with all sorts of really interesting people, lots of engineering leaders and CTOs and founders. I've met a lot of really interesting people so far. And up here with me, I have four amazing engineering leaders with me today. We're going to talk all about the developer experience. They all have deep experience scaling teams, leading big engineering teams. So tonight we're going to be talking all about things related to the internal developer experience. So the experience of developers building software at your company, the end-to-end experience, building and shipping and maintaining that software at your company. So we're going to talk about like why it's important and how to measure it and tools and tips and processes and techniques and things that can help. And also, I want everybody to leave with some practical ways that you can improve DevEx in your organizations and even champion for the improvement of it. How do you advocate for it and how do you champion for it? So before we start, let me introduce myself along with our guests. My name is John Laban. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company named OpsLevel. OpsLevel is an internal developer portal. It is it's a way for engineering teams to quickly build quality software. Is what our spiel is. So in a previous slide, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was an early engineer at Amazon. And I left Amazon with some friends who were founding a really tiny startup called PagerDuty, and I was their first engineer and their first employee there. And I went on to do a bunch of things, including running engineering for a little while. And my experiences there led me to found a startup called OpsLevel with my co-founder Ken, who's here somewhere. And what we're trying to do is make engineering life better for all of your engineers on your engineering team. So let's introduce all of our awesome panelists today. So first up, we have John Kodumal, who is the CTO and co-founder of LaunchDarkly. LaunchDarkly it's a feature management platform, first of all, and it lets developers push code continuously at their own pace, and it lets not having to wait and coordinate with others, and it lets like product teams and marketing teams be able to run experiments and launch features on their schedule as well. And then next we have Malte Ubl. Welcome, Malte. Malte is the CTO of Vercel, and Vercel is a front-end cloud company, and they're also the maintainers of the Next.js framework. So, Vercel, it works to abstract away a lot of the complexity of deploying, hosting, previewing, distributing web applications. You just merge code, and it takes care of the rest. So, welcome, Malte. So, Malte, you've got a really large, you're a fast-growing engineering company. Sorry, we got a bit of feedback. But you've also run engineering teams like Google in the past as well, from what I understand. So, welcome. You're not on yet. And next up, we have Jason Sobel. So, Jason is the CTO of the New York Times, which you're probably all very familiar with, this iconic, company. But they also have a very large engineering team. And, Jason, you're running engineering there, you're as a CTO, but you've also been enabling large engineering teams at other companies, really massive engineering companies like Airbnb. You're head of infrastructure engineering there, and head of infrastructure engineering at Facebook as well. So,
I'm not quite that good at Facebook.
Yeah, I'm inflating the title there.
Yeah, I'll take it. I was CEO of Facebook for a little while.
All right, awesome. And then last but not least, we have Shadi Rostami, who's the head of engineering at Amplitude, which is a digital analytics platform. Amplitude helps development teams understand their data so they can make better decisions and build better products. Shadi, she's been thinking a lot about how to set up a high-functioning team so that people can make good decisions and work independently and not have roadblocks and unnecessary red tape.
That's
some fun music.
Now's the time on Sprockets when we dance. Anybody?
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody catch that reference? A couple people.
All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I guess we'll just start with like a really quick introduction from your end as well. Maybe if you can all tell me just a little bit about yourself and your engineering team and like what it's like to build software, at your company. You want to start?
Yeah. LaunchDarkly engineering. I guess I think of engineering as like all of EPD, so engineering, product delivery, so product design, product delivery, product management, It's about 180 people. The team is, what was the other part of the question? It's like
how they work.
How do they work?
Like,
They work
Tell me
well.
a little bit about your.
Yeah, no, it's a team that so the process of delivering the LaunchDarkly platform is like surprisingly complex from an engineering perspective. Like people look at us and maybe think, okay, this is a very easy engineering problem. It's actually rather complex, especially the analytics piece of it. So we've got a lot of distributed systems engineers. We're organized in a squad-like model, kind of like the Spotify squad model, although like who knows what that really even means. Like I heard Spotify never even operated that way, but putting that aside, I mean, think of it as like 6 to 8 engineers with a product manager and a product designer working together on some specific area of the product.
Awesome. All right. And Malte?
Yeah, can I get the mic on?
His mic's not on.
Check.
Either should be on.
Check.
There's nothing on.
No. This might be not on.
Maybe
Yes, please. I can use this mic for now.
maybe mine is too long.
Okay, yeah. So it's definitely so. I've only been with Vercel for 18 months, and I was at Google for almost 12 years before. So it was definitely culture shock when I joined the company. The way it felt was like a beehive, like where you have organization, but it's only emergent, right? It's kind of comes from the people, but not necessarily from the organization itself. Actually, similar skill than LaunchDarkly on the engineering side. So actually, maybe almost the same. But last year in January, we hired our first engineering managers, and I kind of joined 2 months later. Before that, we have like 70 people directly reporting to the VP of engineering, and so the entire organization has, like, going through hypergrowth, come together in the last year and a half. And it's very fascinating to see how things come together. Overall, we're operating like in a very similar way, where we have, product manager, a designer, technical program manager actually as well, together with an engineering team of like 7 different people.
You must have had a lot more infrastructure at Google. Like it's a lot more Wild West, I'm imagining, how you do things.
Yeah, I can actually talk about this a little bit more, but because we are a company that makes developer experience platforms, we are in a way dramatically more mature in how we operate, in the sense that we are operating on our own stuff. And so we can justify investments in developer experience that actually even Google couldn't make, because there would be no leverage on it in the way that we have it. So
Cool.
That's exciting.
And Jason? Oh, yeah.
So the New York Times, it's funny, I think people are sometimes surprised when they hear that we have a CTO. What does the CTO do? And, software engineers are our second biggest employee population after journalists. So we have quite a substantial software engineering team, and the metaphor that I often use is, everyone, or most people I'd say, are pretty comfortable with the idea of Netflix as a technology company. And if you step way, way back and squint and ignore that their scale is bigger than us, Netflix produces a lot of content, and then they have to deliver that content to consumers through websites and mobile apps and TV apps. New York Times does the same thing. We have this incredible, we think, best newsroom in the world. They produce a lot of content, and our job on the technology side is to deliver that content through websites and mobile apps. So the digital subscription is the biggest business in the New York Times. It's the fastest growing business. It is the future of the New York Times. We still have a very healthy print business, but I think we've all accepted that probably not that many people in the future will be reading the physical newspaper. And so delivering our content digitally is the future of media as far as we can see it anyway. Maybe one day it'll be metaverse or something like that. But for now, not quite there yet. So our software engineering team is set up to, really operate much like any consumer technology company. We have infrastructure teams that work on developer experience, that work on data, that work on shared platforms around monetization or identity or messaging, push messaging, on-site messaging, etc. And then we have teams that are focused on growth. We have teams that are focused on building really incredible consumer experiences. So the New York Times is actually a bundle of products: Cooking, the news, games, Wirecutter, The Athletic now. And so we have a pretty wide consumer footprint as well of people building out those experiences. So yeah, I that's kind of my long-winded way of saying we're set up much like any consumer tech company, even though journalism and the news is really the star of the show. We're just there to help get it out into people's hands.
And Shadi.
Sure. Yeah, we are not a consumer tech. We are a B2B SaaS company, Amplitude. And I hope that a lot of you know about Amplitude. Hopefully we can help you build better digital products. One of the important things for me at Amplitude is that I say engineering, the goal of an engineering org is to help company win or increase our capacity to win. So our engineers really, I want them to be on the call with customer, understand the customer that they're building and help with that. But also, engineering design. We have a similar size of number of engineers, about 180 or something. But we get engineer, designer, and product. We call them, engineering lead, design, product, working as a triad, thinking about how to build the product and make sure it operates it. So our engineers build it, they test it, they operate it, they run it. And they also look at how customers are using it to basically learn from that and improve the product experience.
Awesome. So let's start by defining the term developer experience. It's one of those fuzzy words that's hard to define. Do you folks have a definition? How do you think about it today? I won't call on anybody. But
I'll try for sure. It's actually been an interesting experience for me because I talk to analysts all the time, and they didn't ask about developer experience, and then suddenly they started, and it took me a while to understand that they would mean something very different from what I thought. Like Vercel is using this term all the time. We think about it every day, every minute, and we have a certain understanding of what it means. And what we mean is that you center the developer and think about them in a similar way how you think about the user in a consumer application. But given that they have, they're using you at least 40 hours a week, you heavily influence the productivity, there's a lot of leverage on that. So, and the way I think about developer experience is basically on a micro and a macro level. On a micro level, it's all about everything you do, what's the feedback cycle? So you type something, how long does it take until you see what happens? You commit something, how long do you see the application actually running your new code? You push something in production, how long does it take to see the impact of that change? And then, so that's one side. The other side is kind of the bigger picture of how does that all translate into productivity so that I, as the manager of a team, can just, have an easier time hiring, an easier time retaining, and have overall happy employees that get more work done.
And I think the extra tie on there is productivity, and then the connection between productivity and business impact, which I think is a really fascinating topic for us to touch on. Just justifying developer experience through that impact. We've got to put it all together. I like the micro and macro sort of lens on this.
So yeah, I heard productivity is one of the main, often spoke of as one of the main reasons for improving your developer experience is your developer to be more productive, or improving your developer experience, you're going to have higher quality software, or improving your developer experience, your developers will be happier and then be more productive and higher quality software. But is there a way to actually measure that, and actually understand the outcomes of any of those today? Do you folks, especially productivity, do you folks measure that today?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think there's, it seems that kind of there's sort of DORA and there's space and, there's those frameworks that a lot of people are coalescing around. And I think they measure a lot of valuable things. I tend to feel like what I really would love to measure is how hard is it to take an idea and get it running in production for a scaled audience. That to me is really that to me is the ideal measure of developer productivity. And I've yet you can piece together some of those metrics and kind of get a view on that. But I mean, if anyone here has the answer, I would love to hear it. I'll admit to being a little bit of a cynic on the ability of, or not, or maybe a pessimist on how close we are to really being able to get out what we talk about. I think there's still a strong qualitative component of just asking people and kind of applying your brain to what they're telling you and what you're seeing. But I think this is one where I've had many conversations with many people who disagree and think you can measure it. So we'll see how much of a debate we have.
No, I think, I agree with you. I think it's a very hard thing to measure. Of course, we all use DORA metrics and use all of those. But I also think about the developer experience and the productivity doesn't end at the point that the software is shipped. It's about what does that software do for the users. So, we are a very quantitative company and we measure the North Star. We have North Star and we constantly every week looking at it saying, okay, what we ship does really move the needle for our product. Does it really have that impact? And I think it does two things. It's not just about not the speed that you can put that, but the speed that you can impact. And it gives back actually to the developer a sense of, needing a purpose, that what I did really made a difference. So I think that's also important. There's another thing that we always measure is how many times do my engineers spend on meetings? I do not want engineers. I have a rule, actually, we track it. We look at people's calendar and we track it. And so the ICs should not spend more than 10 hours a week at meetings. And that is, if it goes above, that's been that our productivity is going, because they're going to be wasting their time. Sorry, no offense if you like meetings all the time. But I think you have to be thinking about what are the metrics that are going to help you make sure that your team is successful.
Yeah. One thought that I've had as I've gone through this startup journey 9 years in now is like, if you want to know how bad engineering teams are at measuring productivity, look at your sales and marketing teams. Like, go to a board meeting and look at how scientific those orgs are at measuring productivity, and then compare how good we are in comparison. It's atrocious. I think DORA is a great start. It's a hell of a lot better than what we've had like maybe 10 years ago. It's maybe necessary but not sufficient. But I'm always like appalled at like when I look at a board pack and how precise those other teams can be in comparison to how imprecise and like we're supposed to be the engineers and scientists like running around in lab coats, and they're the ones with like all the formulas with like this quantitative understanding of like, hey, I put dollars in and dollars come out, and we are so bad at being able to do that in comparison.
I think one important kind of thought here is that, maybe we're all like hip Silicon Valley companies and we have a great developer experience, but the world out there is rough. And so I share skepticism of metrics like DORA, but if your build takes 40 minutes and you make it take 5 minutes, you will see very, very substantial improvements in productivity that are very material to the business. Now, if you don't bring it from 5 minutes down to 4 minutes, you won't see it be 20% better, right? Like, it doesn't work like that. But those orders of magnitude to a lot of stuff. And then if you bring it down from 5 minutes to something like 15 seconds, where, for example, you can actually have a non-interrupted workflow, now you are operating in a completely different way than just 20% better. And so I think while you can be skeptical of these metrics, it's worth looking at them and saying, like, where did we really suck, and make that be maybe in the good 25%.
Especially in the feedback loop areas. And so like shortening them by orders of magnitude is really where you get the main benefits. And Shadi, you mentioned meetings. So often I hear about like the concept of flow and developer flow, and the concept of being in the zone and not having to like loading up all that context in your head and not having to lose it. And so meetings is one way to like destroy that. Are there other ways, are there other things that you folks do to try to keep developers in their flow? Like not only shorten meetings, but like maybe cluster them or anything else?
Yeah, I think, again, people should be protecting the calendar. They should be careful that, using some tools or whatever that I'm trusting in the meetings, I have the state of the flow. Context switching is another one, right? We are all constantly bombarded by Slacks and all other things. And I think I tell people, depending on who you are, you have to make a decision. Maybe this is a time that I don't want to get interrupted. Or maybe you're somebody that if you get interrupted and ask somebody a question, it gives you a sense of quick gratification that I achieved something, and then you can be faster in what you're doing. But I think be very, very conscious and intentional that how is it impacting my productivity and productive. But I want to actually go back to your point about, things that are really bothering you. Missing is one of them. Long build time is another one that really shows. Or flaky test environment that I keep testing and it fails, and I run it the second time it passed, and I have to run it 3 times before I can push the code. So these are the things that are very, very tangible. And I'm at Amplitude, we have a long way improving our developer productivity, but I think these are the things that are important to help you to be in that flow that you can really produce and be very, enjoying while you're working as a developer, and then being frustrated with things that are happening.
I think what I would add is, so sure, no meetings is great. What really helps flow is that you have such clarity of, as a developer, of understanding the business value of what you're doing, of understanding the customer of the software that you'll be using, and everything about that you do, that you can deliver as much as possible without talking to anyone. And that kind of sounds antisocial, but that's if I need to go coding for 3 hours, I can only do that if I actually understand enough about what I want to do for 3 hours, and then, and you can extend it however long you want. I think that's actually the real driver for flow, is that the people doing the work understand what they're doing and not just, read a ticket and then trying to kind of translate that into code.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's a proxy of understanding. If talking to someone is you have to go interrupt your line of thinking and you have to ask someone and wait for some answer, and there's that's one way that you're breaking that flow. So that's interesting.
And I actually want to add something on that. I completely agree with you. As a developer, as an engineer, we're constantly making trade-offs, making decisions, and understanding the real user who's going to be using the product and the real problem that we're solving is going to help us to make the right trade-offs and, being able to make that decision much better. That helps you to be productive, remain in that state of flow, figure out, am I over-engineering? Am I building the right product? Am I doing the right thing? And I think this all comes, and I always say that 10x engineers are not people who write 10 times more code, are the people who understand who they're building with, they understand the user, and they really build the right product.
What about cognitive load, which is another thing that probably hurts the developer experience? The more things you have to know to do your job. And I feel the longer an engineering org exists, the more cognitive load builds up in that engineering organization. I wonder, Jason, is there anything that you folks do to try to reduce cognitive load on your developers? Given that you have so many.
Yeah, I would say I think the Times is, kind of on a journey. The technology stack when I joined was very fragmented, and I think fragmentation really, can really contribute to cognitive load. I think where I've probably the place where I think in my career we've been the most successful here was actually at Facebook. And I can't really speak to how things have changed since I left in 2013. But, we built so many of our tools ourselves because it was just a different time. You didn't quite have the same access to, all the great tools in SaaS ecosystem that's developed. From when Facebook started, that really wasn't there. And we also had enough developers that we could afford to make this huge, internal investment in those tools. And the advantage that we had was that a vast majority of our tools all understood what else existed in the ecosystem. So our tasks tool knew about our calendars, knew about our configuration system, knew about our dashboarding, like all the tool, our experimentation framework, all of these things were connected and had been designed. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but they were all designed to work together. And I think that really integrated and purposely designed tool chain was a huge value add there and really helped reduce cognitive load. And I think for all the benefits of SaaS, I think one of the challenges that I see in the modern era is because a lot of these solutions are more solving a slice of the developer journey or the developer workflow, you have these discontinuities in ways that can make things a lot harder. And I don't exactly know what to do about it. I mean, maybe all you folks working on those companies can help. But as someone who uses a lot of tools now at the Times, I think that's something that we see, increases cognitive load. And I certainly don't claim to have the answer. I do think we're trying to defragment. That's probably the biggest thing we're doing at the Times is let's just have fewer solutions for similar problems so that we're at least not imposing bad tax.
Yeah, so there's all these great point solutions out there that are best in breed, but the more you add over time, just the more things that developers have to know and use. Interesting. Right. Well, so how do you folks actually prioritize improvements? Like if you want to make your developers better, faster, stronger, how does that work today? Do you have teams that are responsible for this concept, or is it kind of everybody who's responsible, or how does it work at your company?
Yeah, I can start because I think we do have a slightly larger team, and so we do have an organization that we call delivery engineering, and they have a number of responsibilities, but I would say they own the majority of the developer tool chain at the New York Times, and it is an explicit priority of theirs to really understand where are our developers' biggest pain points and how do we reduce them. We have a couple of teams outside that organization that also work in that space, but that's a big part of their mission.
Do you folks have maybe broader?
I have the super hot take. One of the first things when I joined Vercel, we had an internal DX team.
Yeah.
And so I asked them what do you guys do?
What is it that you do here? Yeah.
And they gave me an answer.
Engineers love that. New CTO joins.
And
what do you do?
Their answer makes a lot of sense. So, okay, I say thank you. Then I go talk to a bunch of customers and they talk me about their problems. And I'm like, those are the same problems that my internal DX team is doing. And so we turned them into another product line, basically. It was really interesting. So we no longer have an internal DX team. Although I think that the learning there is that there is a need to have, for the special case of Vercel, where we are developing our product in itself, so we constantly our own customers. I call it also empathy and easy mode, right? You just straight up know whether the thing you're building is good. So you're going to use it to build the thing. But you still need someone who just kind of keeps the lights on and understands that, there's some manual work maybe involved in setting some stuff up that can't be fully automated and owns that space. So we do have now a group that has at least the mandate to have an overarching look at how things work. But overall, basically, because of the nature of the business where we are building the thing that we need for ourselves and for our customers, we have this distributed responsibility where everyone's kind of obviously focusing on the thing that they're actually working on, but the overall company is kind of pushing in that direction as well.
Yeah, I also have the same thing. We have a central team, and sometimes central team that's supposed to help people, but you have a combo. So you have a central team, and each team needs to be thinking about also their own thing. And sometimes the central team can help them build tools or whatever that can enable them. But I always go and ask them, tell me the thank you notes that you receive from the rest of the organization. So what are the things that you're enabling the organizations? Because sometimes they can go on their ivory tower and build something that they're not really, solving pain for the rest of the organization. But I think, I believe that it cannot be just a central team. So each team should be in charge of their own destiny and get some help from the central team to help them go faster, have some expertise, but developer and each team need to be able to build, run, and test, operate their own code.
I want to touch a little bit upon what you're saying. It sounded like there can be some skepticism that like what that team, the central team might be building might be actually helping. And I wanted to like actually help people here, like help equip them with how to justify like improvements in developer experience. Why, should your company, like if you wanted to make the case to your boss about, hey, let's invest in improving the developer experience instead of, whatever the opportunity cost might be. It might be like making a feature or doing something that's, revenue generating. How can they make that case? Like what are some things that they can do to actually like help prioritize some of these investments?
I'd say like first and foremost, it's understanding that investments in platform are like force multipliers. I guess I would start out with like sort of like the antagonistic view of like if you have a leadership team that's sort of like focused on like delivering features and you have this anti-pattern of turning into a feature factory, the easiest thing you can do is sort of like set a floor. Like this is the minimum investment that we can possibly tolerate, and we do that through various means like KTLO versus new feature sort of investments. One of my mentors, Jean-Michel Lemieux, who was the CTO of Atlassian and then later Shopify, his like hot take is that you should be spending 50% of your R&D investments on platform. Now that's broader than just developer experience. That's all of platform. But the idea is like, hey, you're a technology company. The investments that you make in that core platform engineering are the force multipliers that'll help you in the market and make you win. So why should that not be 50%? And if you are just investing like from a feature by feature perspective, you're never gonna regain those advantages. So somewhere between here's the floor, and we do that with like a KTLO versus new, and hey, let's shoot for the moon and like aim for 50%. We're nowhere near 50% at LaunchDarkly, just transparently.
Did JML put his money where his mouth is, and were they actually investing at Shopify? Like Ken used to work there. He worked for JML at Shopify. Did they invest 50% of their time in 49? 49.
Atlassian was close to that, I think. And JML was definitely pushing it in that direction. The other thing he says is like that is invariant whether you're 2 or 2,000 or 20,000 engineers. He's got a new startup, so maybe one of the two people is platform engineer. Sorry.
I think it's also worth looking back at the order magnitude improvements because one of the downsides of having a standing team is that they're going to do their job and they're going to possibly optimize things that aren't like the most leverage. But if you go and see like where do we really suck and make that 10 cents better, which often is totally a possibility, that you are like it's so obvious that you're seeing these very immediate benefits that you don't get these questions. I think my main advice for if you are running an internal platform team, and I 100% agree with Shadi was saying that there are these the risk of building ivory towers that aren't quite what people want that don't solve the problems, is that you absolutely always need a customer zero who is building the product with you and who is immediately validating that it's a good idea. And what I've seen work, and this is experience from Google, where there was both the luxury of having me actually personally working on such a team and having a wide range of customers available, potential customers available, is what we would do is we would say, hey, we have this piece of thing, it's not done, but if you come and help me deliver it into your organization, whatever it will be perfect for you. And so are you willing to take that risk? And then you find the team that is in the right life cycle where they feel that's worth for them doing, like taking on this additional risk for the kind of guaranteed benefit in the outcome. I've seen that be very, very successful. And then you have something that is basically has, in startup terms, product market fit when it comes to market in your company versus something that, might be not actually what people want.
Yeah, I want to actually second that because I agree with you. For when you're developing features, we always have customer development partner. We're working for external customer to help us develop the feature, make sure we are building a feature that is right and it solves customer pain. the same thing applies for the platform teams or delivery teams or whatever you want to call them. Their customers are the developers within the company. So really, they need to be really in touch with them and have this development partner, something that is willing to be really, what they're building is really applicable to me, and it's very important. And one other thing, I'm going to go to the extreme of why developer experience matters and you're trying to justify. If I want to go to the extreme, if a developer wakes up in the middle of the night to basically deal with a pager issue, their developer experience is not good. And the customer experience is not good too. So investing in some of these work not only helps that developer so they can sleep through the night, it also helps the customers who are actually using the product.
And during the day too, like if they get paged during the day, they're not like writing code or doing, they're getting interrupted.
Yeah, I think a lot of this really also depends on your audience. And it's been interesting for me now at the times where, previously working at, I guess what we would call tech companies in the Valley, where, most of the senior decision makers are sort of steeped in technology and technology culture. I think, it's not to say it's always easy to get support for this, but I think it's very different than what I found at the times where just the context and the experience of what being a developer is like has been different. And so the framework that I've kind of come to over the last couple of years and how I've been talking to some of my peers and our CEO about this is this idea of undifferentiated work. And so it's a little qualitative, but, I go out to our engineers and I say, how much of your time is spent sort of moving the business forward and building new features and investing in our customers, growing, all those things that, if you're a CEO, you want to hear. And then how much of your time is spent on toil, on undifferentiated work, on fighting with build systems, on waiting for builds, on flaky on all these things that developer experience can really improve. And that can tell a really, really clear story, right? If that's 50-50, someone who isn't that technical can understand, well, if I can make that 50% of undifferentiated work, if I can make that 25 or 10 or 5, then how much extra work am I getting towards the things that I maybe do understand a little bit more intuitively? And so that's a framework that I've used that I found helpful.
Awesome. Well, I a couple of quick last questions. One of them was around tooling. I just wanted to talk about how much tooling is important in improving your developer experience. It certainly isn't a panacea. And just as, a bit of a disclaimer, some of us sell tools here that help.
Use OpsLevel.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, so there is a trade-off, right? The
Are
more
there kickbacks?
the more tooling can make some order of magnitude differences in some cases when we're talking about feedback loops and things. But on the other hand, what you're saying, Jason, as you add more tools, that adds more cognitive load over time. I just wondered, how do you think about tools versus?
I mean, I definitely. Just.
Is it off?
I don't know.
We might have to. We're losing one mic at per hour.
It should be on.
And it was working. Now it's no. This one's still working. All right, just throw this. I definitely. We're killing microphones here. I did want to give the impression, I think, tooling is everything in a way, right? I mean, imagine you're trying to, build a bridge and you have a chisel, versus. So I think, developers are no different. The tools up.
No.
This one is not working.
The tools. Oh no, okay, it's me. Have some EM field. The tools obviously make a huge difference. So. I think probably one of the biggest questions a lot of us wrestle with is how much do you push for consolidation and standardization versus allowing teams to maybe go more what they think might be most appropriate for them, and there's trade-offs on different points of the spectrum there.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe worth adding is that if there are different tools and different degrees of centering the developers, and I think if the like I think you can balance the cognitive load issue, which I think is super super real. Like again, I mean, I keep talking about my transition from Google to Vercel, but it's like this. I was like, they were like buying all these SaaS tools. And I was like used again to like for the bug tracker and the code review tool, and it was all kind of made out of one vendor, and now I had like a diagram tool and like some crazy thing here, and not just Google Docs. So that was definitely culture shock, and I very much experienced kind of the big downside of that. On the other hand, you have to make, I think, decisions. Like, what is the counterfactual to doing it yourself? And like, how good is that going to be? And what's going to be the opportunity cost of building that? And so if something is really critical and part of that your delivery process, then I think, it's just like any other make or buy decision, but the case can be very, very strong to buy versus making something half baked from scratch.
Well, how should an engineering organization get started? Like, if they really wanted to start improving developer experience, like, what's some practical ways to, take steps in that direction, especially when they feel like they have a poor internal developer experience today?
I would start with the basics. So I do think like there is value in measuring things like the DORA metrics. Like the DORA metrics, that includes like, does it take 2 hours to build your software? So that'll cover some bases. One of the things, if you read Accelerate, that they talk about is like they self-admit that like the DORA metrics are not the end-all be-all. They talk a lot about double-checking with surveys. So developer experience surveys, I think, is a huge, very easy thing that you can do, which is something that we've done. If you start early, you can track this over time. So you can get some directional, like, are we getting better at developer experience or getting worse? Pick the things that you care about measuring and then start tracking them over time. That is how I would say you start.
Smart. So start with measurement, and then that's step one, so you know if you're actually making improvements.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if you're an early stage startup, for sure. Even if you're later in, like getting some baseline measurements can be cheap and very, very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wanted to second on the survey. Run the survey to get the and then there might be 20 different things that we can improve. Pick 3 things that we are going to improve, because otherwise none of them is going to improve. The other thing is that the one that you pick, everybody's going to be thinking about it. If it doesn't get improved, the next time you run the survey, it's going to be worse because you're talking and you haven't improved it. So pick the one you want to improve, focus on that, and then measure it over time, and then pick another one another time.
Yeah, I really agree. If you're going to run a survey, ask your developers to compare their experience to a previous time period, because developers will always say whatever they have is terrible.
Or to previous jobs.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. I was hoping to open up some questions from the crowd, and we already have one. I guess I'll use my microphone. Oh, we got one.
This was dedicated.
Dedicated.
But does it work?
Yeah.
Well done.
The why? Unit testing? Not the why?
There we go.
All right.
We'll fix it.
At the risk of letting everyone wax philosophical, I'm going to ask what the difference is between productivity in your mind and happiness plus motivation. I can give you my answer. It's focus. So the words were productivity versus happiness plus motivation. Anyone who has any about that one?
I think those they form a hierarchy. Like, so I would define productivity as efficiency times effectiveness. So both like how fast are you delivering, and then how good is the thing that comes out, and certainly motivation and other factors going to play into that. But like if you correctly define productivity, then it is in the end the correct outcome metric. Like another related insight to this is the relationship of speed and velocity, which kind of spins into the question of effectiveness in terms of not only running and building things, but then also making sure that they are pointing in the right direction and and how fast you can then cycle back once you inevitably figure out that it's not the right thing and do the right thing.
To me, it's when your happiness, it's basically it's the mission and the impact that you're having with you that's happening. Productivity, it's how to what is knowing what the impact the work that you're doing has.
Yeah, I feel like happiness also it's broader than just you might be more productive when you're happier, but yeah, you might also have better retention. You love your job and you'll stay there longer. And there's a lot of other side benefits.
And people stick around for 5 years versus 1 year.
Yeah.
Vercel, thank you all. Quick question. You mentioned cognitive load, developer toil. When you come across something that could potentially help, whose responsibility is it? I heard it mentioned of a DX team or a platform team, but is it really the entire team's responsibility to look for those things, or who's looking out for those kinds of opportunities?
I would say, I think, again, it really is going to depend on your organization and how you're set up. A lot of what we're big enough that we're really pushing for more standardization, more of the paved road. Netflix has the paved road metaphor that I've always liked. We're trying to get there. We've got some work to do, but I think we're on a good path. And I think in that sort of paved road idea, the central team should really be thinking about the components of the paved road. They should be really looking for, okay, for each use case that we're trying to solve for, we've got to be owning the 1 or maybe 2 solutions on the paved road. And then where people have sort of permission or agency to go off the paved road, that's probably more on them. What we're doing, we're looking for a little more approval at that point. Like, we don't want people just freely going off the paved road. But again, I think every organization is a little different on whether you can have exceptions or you can't and how you get them. But again, that model is very dependent on this idea of more standardization and centralization, which some organizations do and some don't.
So I technically have a business degree, and the only thing I remember from it is there was a class on kind of organizational structure and with a focus on IT departments. And it was extremely insightful that the way, and this is empirically true in organizations like the classic organizations of of a large company, how the IT departments work is they oscillate between centralization and decentralization, because you centralize because it's more efficient, and then the individual teams say, okay, but they're not built what I want, so I'm going to hire someone from myself, and then suddenly you have all these unstandardized folks doing all this crap, and then you reorganize them centrally, and so you kind of you start this thing all over again. And I think the professional thing to do is to go find the right solution somewhere in the middle, kind of acknowledging that there are some things that can actually only be correctly done on a local per team fashion, but there's limits to this, and there's things that just categorically won't get done if it's not someone's job to think about it on a kind of global picture. And so you can't make a choice. You really do need both, and the only question is how you kind of set the accent, whether you want more autonomy on the local level or whether you say I prefer the more standardized, centralized approach.
Thanks.
So, this is for you, Shadi. You mentioned the concept of customer. We've struggled with this concept internally in our teams. For the developer experience team, from my company, we have a team of about 10 people in developer experience, and about, I would say, 400 developers. We had a larger team, but that got cut down over a period. So, I would tend to call them consumers instead of customers. That paints the picture better. In many cases, developer experience team is considered as a cost center more than a revenue center, because what you're creating is not selling externally. You're creating infrastructure. We create a lot of infrastructure, developer portals, and as we look at OpsLevel or Cortex or Backstage.io or so many other companies where we could probably buy, but we build, and so many other things we build. But at the end of it, the definition of customer is not really clear in the developer experience because it's not paying, so it can't be a customer. And that's the sentiment which runs in most of the companies because you're a cost center, not a customer. I don't know how you differentiate that.
I think John had mentioned, like, if you think about it in terms of leverage, like every dollar you put into enabling the rest of the engineers is like $10 that you'll get back.
So the struggle which I have is for the DORA metrics, I have metrics about, lines of code written out, latency improvement, pipeline, flakiness, you name it, right? So what?
I think, sorry, it was directed to you.
No. I think
Like, how do you manage this? I find it very difficult to convert that to dollar of revenue. It's very abstract, right?
right. It's very hard to convert that, but if your build time goes from 40 minutes to 5 minutes, then you can look at if you have defined a North Star for the actual team, you can say how much are they moving that. Again, it's all related to each other, but I think you need, sorry, go ahead.
So what happens is build time goes from 40 minutes to 5 minutes only once. To keep it at 5 minutes, you still need to spend a lot of energy to keep it running. Right? So it's a pretty complex equation as you mature, especially in relatively larger organizations where you have like 1,000 people, a 400 people development team, but a shrinking developer experience team. I think you also mentioned that, I think Vercel, I forget your name. You mentioned that there is no developer experience team in your place, right?
Yeah, I did mention that, but it's not there because the entire company is doing nothing else but developer experience.
It's kind of cheating.
Yeah, I wonder what point in time
So
do you
one,
think-
try this, I guess. I mean, I don't know if this will work, but again, think about undifferentiated work that all the other engineers are doing. So if you go out to all the other 390 developers, how much of their time is spent moving the business forward? Just ask them.
Excellent. We did this survey, and I will quote a number. Like that was like 4 years ago at my place. The number came at 70%.
So if that's true, I mean, I'm shocked if that's true. But if that's true, if you believe that, then you know what your leverage opportunity is. At best, you can make those 390 people 30% more efficient. And so maybe it's not worth it. I'm a little skeptical that's real, but I mean, like if you believe that number, then you're probably killing it. You're doing great.
But like 30%.
Sometimes they exaggerate also. Like we ask, things are never as bad as they look from inside or never as good as they look from outside. That's the reality of life. If I ask a developer, they will say, oh shit, this is broken. That makes it really more pessimistic, right? Anyway, I mean, wonder if you have the same sentiments inside saying...
I've never met an optimistic developer about the developer. I'd love to meet these developers who think they're 70% of their time you've got the best developers in the world, man.
And 30% improvement across all of your engineering teams. Like, engineers are so expensive, and you should really make the case that their time is really valuable, and like how much money can you possibly save. That's a huge leverage.
Yes.
Maybe this doesn't help you, but I think it's actually really important what those engineers are working on, because if they are also a cost center, then things get more complicated, right? But it's also as a tech company hard to, I think, sometimes empathize. But in large companies, often like the engineering departments are considered cost centers because they don't make any money. They just cost money, and they work on like the data warehousing and so if you're the developer experience team for the data warehousing team. I think it is getting a little bit more difficult, but I think you can always still, make the transitive kind of relationship to actually making revenue.
Usually what is celebrated more, like culturally, is something which is immediately customer usable, whether it's like trend across the board, across the industry. That's where the disconnect in measurement and value add and all that comes. And I think that's a very subtle battle to discuss, right? It's very...
we had another question over here. Oh, thought I saw one before.
This one. Just like four of you guys who are managing different engineering teams and different orgs, when you're measuring developer experience and developer productivity, these two things, what are the first thing which comes to your mind when you're looking at those numbers? Like, what is the term that how you are quantifying it? Okay, this term, developer experience, my developers are feeling awesome, 70% of them. I'm just taking a lot of this gender. And developer productivity, push time to code or push time to build, reducing that time. So, what are these two key matrices that you look at?
So what I do is, if you start with having empathy for the developer and kind of making that part of how you think about things, you don't have to even attempt necessarily measuring that too hard. And then the metric that I care about, certainly at the abstract level, is basically total time to insight. So kind of from someone starting a task to figuring out the impact of that task or what to do next.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. We're at time. We've been at this for a little while, so let's wrap up. And there's going to be lots of food and drink still here. We're going to be out here till 9, so please stick around. And once again, thanks everybody for being part of this panel.